Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Weather Center Nazario. Happy Saturday, November 18th, 2023. I hope you've been having a phenomenal weekend up to this point, and I hope you continue to maintain that high note as you go into the back end of Saturday night and into Sunday, especially since we have a lot of the severe weather out there that's been impacting not only the southeast, but a lot of our folks down in the Caribbean finally beginning to make its way out. I have a lot of positive trends to communicate to you guys today and a lot of good news to pass along, but there are always some catches here in the weather world, so be prepared as we get towards the back end of this video. I'm going to discuss what it is I see on the horizon, and I can openly say it has nothing to do with the tropics, but actually the winter time. Before we go any further, though, I have two items on the itinerary that I'd like to address with you guys before we get fully into this Weather Center segment. First and foremost, I want to extend a sincere level of gratitude and a gracious thanks to all of you for your generous support over these last few months since I started up Weather Center Nazario back during our coverage for Hurricane Idalia. We are now 3/4 of the way to 6,000 subscribers, guys, and I remember I was over the moon when we hit our first 1,000 subscribers, and I just can't express to you enough the level of gratitude and the thanks that I'm giving. You see what I did there? The thanks that I'm giving for you guys constantly supporting the channel, dropping your positive comments, and connecting with so many of you, not only from Florida, but from many different walks of life, from overseas, from the Caribbean, from the Bahamas. Everywhere you look, I'm meeting more and more of you guys, and it's been such an amazing experience. You motivate me to do better and better every day and to continue my education as a future meteorologist to be able to communicate to you the best and most reliable information that I physically can. So thank you all. I wanted to go ahead and share that information before we wrap up for the weekend because I will more than likely not be doing a video tomorrow. And number two on the itinerary, Daniel, if you are out there, he's one of my longtime subscribers, one of my longtime viewers. A lot of us in the chats have noticed you haven't really made an appearance for our evening tropics talks, and I haven't seen any of your comments in the videos. So I wanted to make a brief shout out to Daniel. I'm not going to express too many personal details, but I know you let me know that you are dealing with some pretty serious ailments out there, buddy, and we're all wishing you well. Not only myself, but the rest of the community. Our thoughts and our prayers and our hopes are with you, and we hope to see you come back here very soon, dude. So Daniel, big shout out to you, buddy. Alrighty, folks, this video is going to be a little fast and furious, pardon the puns, but we don't really have a whole lot to cover today. We're mainly just going to do a broad overview update of what we have going on and what the future looks like, not only for the Thanksgiving holiday, but going forward as to what the potential winter season has in store for us, especially down here in the southeast. Starting off on our water vapor image, you can see just how expansive of a storm we had begin to show itself over the last few days. This is a combination of what we had affecting the Gulf Coast, the southeast Florida coastline, and what was left of PTC 22, now fully absorbed in this long wave trough axis and this baroclinic system that is now supported not only by the subtropical jet, but by the polar front jet. And guys, look at how expansive this system is. Stretched out like a gigantic, almost slinky-like feature affecting all the way up to eastern Canada, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. The northeastern United States are feeling the effects of the parent low system well to the north. You could see it kind of getting ready to move into the Nova Scotia coastline. We have lots of enhanced activity occurring for Bermuda, winds, rain alike. We are expecting frontal passage for that area as well, so you guys should see a bit of a cooling trend over the next 24-48 hours. We're keeping a close eye on you and the thunderstorm and rainfall activity that's been barreling through that region as this system only ramps up more and more, picking up polar front jet support at 300 millibars. And then look at how much inundation we're still seeing for the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and Puerto Rico could see a little bit of this shower activity trickle into the western extent of that island as well. Folks, you can see the tail end of this feature all the way feeding into the eastern Pacific monsoonal trough, to where a lot of the actual eastern Pacific itself has cleared from an abundance of its convective activity we've been analyzing over the last several days, and you can see the tail end of this enormous shrimp-like baroclinic system just continues to grow. And what's very interesting and very neat here as well is if you guys look right in through here, we have what's called an instant occlusion kind of trying to take shape there. You can see a separate little baroclinic leaf feature forming up, another little vortice right in through here where my pen is, where I drew that low, in association with the overall parent system to the north continuing to stretch over the ridge in the Atlantic. Very cool, very interesting to see what took shape, what manifested itself from the severe weather isolated to the Caribbean to the southeast, now spans the entire North American eastern seaboard all the way down through to Central America. Pretty impressive. Taking a close look real quick before we lose the sun, you could say we are still continuing to see a feeding of thunderstorm activity for the Dominican Republic and Haiti. For a while there, you guys were dodging a lot of the most significant activity associated with what was once called PTC-22. Never had a fighting chance of really organizing with that subtropical jet, digging in and creating this manifestation of a beast of a storm, if you will. And now we're starting to see a training effect of these thunderstorms, particularly over the southern and eastern portions of the Dominican Republic and the southwestern extent of Haiti. Very similar to what we saw with Jamaica. I know last night during our tropics talk, Kingston area and further to the south and east of where Kingston is located in Jamaica saw a very similar situation unfold, and I do believe that's where we had the most significant flooding going on, because we had very organized and very aggressive singular thunderstorm cells that would flare up over the terrain and kind of just situate themselves there, keep back building towards the south, dumping copious amounts of rain on that area. And I do believe from the media coverage I've watched, that's where a lot of our widespread serious flooding has taken shape. Moving on over to the windy radar, you can see we do have a widespread line of shower and thunderstorm activity moving across eastern Dominican Republic. Haiti looks to be kind of clear, but we do have a dead zone between our radar imagery here, so there could possibly be some thunderstorms hidden between the two. And if you look out over Jamaica, unfortunately, because of that southerly flow, if you guys paid close attention on the visible satellite, you could see a lot of that low-level cloud cover just pumping to the north. And what's happening there is all that low-level residual moisture over Jamaica still is encountering the higher terrain features, and they're acting like half pipes, if you will. If you guys are familiar with skateboarding, you've seen the half pipes. Those mountains are acting like ramps or half pipe features to where those moisture pockets can kind of hit the side of the mountains, go up to where they can condense into clouds, and as soon as they go up, condense, they immediately want to rain back down. And that's why we have very, very isolated pockets of shower activity still happening in Jamaica, despite all that dry air coming in behind the system. All right, taking a look at the European model, we're going to go over the next 48 to 72 hours because I do believe that's about when we're finally going to start to see a lot of that precip action begin to clear out. As you guys saw, with that system stretching out like an accordion or like a slinky I had said earlier in this video, that tail end is going to just keep pulling moisture out of the eastern Pacific, out of South and Central America, and funneling it over top the areas of Jamaica, Cuba, more predominantly Haiti, or the whole island of Hispaniola for that matter, possibly stretching into the Puerto Rico area. No significant concern for widespread disastrous flooding like we anticipated with the initial arrival of PTC-22, but just an elevated chance for rainfall activity, especially since you guys have been fairly dry over the last few days. As you go through time, the first 24 hours of this loop, you can see that that tail end is expected to stay there pretty consistently across pretty much the same general area. Luckily, it looks like the models are thinking a lot of the higher terrain or the mountainous features in the island of Hispaniola are going to keep a lot of the prevalent rain threat to the coastlines particularly. So if you live along the coast and we continue to see those training thunderstorms, be prepared. We're likely going to start to see some collecting water, especially in the lowest terrain features in your local area. You can also see, very neat, we identified this on the water vapor imagery, you could see that the European model is anticipating that instant occlusion or that little low pressure development as it continues to move off to the east-northeast towards Bermuda. So your rain chances up there in Bermuda, as well as an elevated wind threat, are not likely to diminish, at least as we go through the rest of this weekend. If you continue off to about the 48 hour mark, you can finally see this system begins to really thin out, start to wash out. Bermuda is just about in the clear at this point. Frontal passage is anticipated to take place. We're also still looking pretty good in the southeast, but that will likely be changing as we get closer and closer to Tuesday, Wednesday, and then eventually the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll get into that here in a second, but you can also see even up to the 72-hour point, we are still expecting a little bit of residual moisture down there for the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and stretching into Puerto Rico, maybe even the U.S. British Virgin Islands as well. Could see a little bit of enhanced shower activity brought on by the extreme southernmost extent of that very expansive system. Nothing to be concerned about. We're just going to get a little showery rain down there. Might see a little bit of heavier thunderstorms depending on how unstable the environment is with that tropical flow still very prevalent down in that area. We haven't seen a tremendous cooling trend just yet, so I'd imagine a lot of that warm equatorial air is still there, providing just enough buoyancy to get some daytime thunderstorms going. Very similar to what we saw with the orographic lift going on, or that mechanical lift over the island of Jamaica. Now, we're only going to spend a couple moments on this chart here. This is our tropical Atlantic or our North Atlantic wind shear, and the only reason I want to bring this up is because I know you're probably going to hear from other weather sources you follow,
hurricane season ain't over until it's it's over.
Well, guys, I'm here to confidently tell you, I think it's safe to say the tropical Atlantic has officially closed its doors, locked up tight, threw away the key, at least until 2024. As you take a look through time, there is a small window of opportunity to see maybe some favorable shear environment down there in the Caribbean. It looks like a lot of our subtropical jet energy is going to stay over the Gulf of Mexico, cutting across Florida, which is going to play a big role in what I'm going to show you here next. But outside of the shear being fairly decent out there in the Caribbean, we're going to have such high amounts of dry air and very little moisture to play around with, alongside the fact we won't really have enough tropical energy to really see anything spin up from this point forward. And as you continue through the back end of this forecast loop, you can see a tremendous amount of wind shear just kind of encompasses the rest of the entire area of the tropics. So it goes without saying, there's nothing on the ensembles, nothing on the probabilities, and there's nothing on any of our long-range deterministic models worth discussing as of right now. Naturally, there's always that 1% little piece of doubt in the back of my mind, and I'm sure a lot of other folks are going to continue to interrogate and see what they can find. But folks, I'm here to tell you, it looks like 2023's hurricane season has officially concluded. All right, we're going to quickly shift gears. I'm talking we're going to go from first to fifth gear, and we're going to translate out of the tropical AOR up to the United States, because you can see in a few days, Storm Prediction Center is highlighting the Gulf Coast, particularly East Texas, parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, and most of Mississippi for that matter, for the slight risk of some pretty good severe activity, to include the isolated threat for tornadoes, large hail, and very strong convective gusts with the storm system we're going to begin to dissect as we go over the next couple of charts. So first things first, we're actually going to take a look at the 850 millibar level. And the reason why we're going to look at 850 millibars is because I want you to look closely across the southeast quadrant of the United States. This immediately tells me, and I'm sure a lot of other weather enthusiasts and meteorologists alike will agree with me, when you see this type of 850 millibar flow coming out of the south, a low-level jet, that immediately shines a light on a potential area where they could see some pretty dramatic severe activity. As you take the European model through the loop, you can see already we have some good southerly flow occurring over the Texarkana area, parts of Louisiana, funneling out of the Gulf of Mexico. And once you get to the 72-hour mark, look at how strong of a southerly low-level jet we have occurring across parts of the Appalachians, through Tennessee, Kentucky, trying to get into the lower Great Lakes Midwest region, coming right across the Gulf Coast, Florida Panhandle, Alabama, Mississippi. And this is where I'm 100% on board with the European and the GFS models alike, calling for a widespread severe weather event with this next approaching frontal system. We're also going to take a quick glance at our dew point temperatures down there, because on top of the low-level jet, we want to make sure we have ample moisture and temperature and dew point contrast on either side of this frontal feature that's going to be coming across the Great Plains out of the Central Rocky Mountains, doing a cold plunge, a front-range cold plunge, as we used to identify in Air Force weather. As early as the 36-hour mark, you can already see our dew point temps are beginning to moderate, and we have that modification taking place as that low-level jet begins to develop, driving a lot of that tropical warm air out of the Gulf, out of the Caribbean, out of the portions of Central America. You can see it already beginning to fetch its way to the north over the southern plains, spanning across Texas into Oklahoma and getting a little bit further into Kansas, trying to come across the border of Nebraska. If you look right in through here, you can still see that little bit of contrast between the modified dew point temps, the warmer dew point temps, moving up towards the central plains. As you go to 48 hours out, you can see that there is a stark contrast on either side of this. This is our frontal system moving down to the south, and at the 72-hour mark, it goes without saying, you can see a real clear delineation between our bona fide dense polar air interacting with that equatorial warm maritime tropical air that's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, inundating the rest of the southeast, especially the Florida Peninsula, and that's exactly where we're going to have a significant clashing of air masses leading to our severe outbreak. And then last but not least, we're going to tie it up into a nice bundle looking at our 12Z European model. This is our MSLP precip overlay. If you look down there across the south, there goes our low beginning to form up over the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle, and you can already see the moisture increase along the east side of this because of that southerly flow, the distinct southerly flow highlighted by our isobars here. As you go to the 48-hour mark, you begin to see the low deepen, very aggressive southerly flow right in through here. I'm looking at this high pressure over the Great Lakes, and believe it or not, even though it's positioned up over the Great Lakes far away from our Gulf of Mexico and our Caribbean source region, if you track these isobars, you can see exactly where the southern position of that high pressure is drawing a lot of that modified tropical moisture up to interact with our low. As that cold air along the backside of it begins to work its way down, we we probably have a very strong cold front forming up right in through this general area. And as you track it through to the 72-hour mark, let me clear the ink out of the way. You go to 72 hours, and there you have it. You can see a very, very sharp line, not only associated with that frontal feature coming across, a very good cold air advection for the southeast, and the rest of the United States, for that matter, coming up along the back side of this. But with that interaction going on right here, I do anticipate we're going to have a strong band of thunderstorms to watch out for as we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, and then eventually Thursday. As you go beyond 72 hours, the Euro is thinking we are going to see frontal passage for the remainder of the United States, but I'm going to stop the clock right here at 132 hours out. This is as we transition Thanksgiving evening into Friday morning, Black Friday morning. Look at what we have taken shape out over the Gulf of Mexico. And we're going to switch to the GFS here momentarily because, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, I do think El Nino is going to put its foot on the gas, go full throttle, and we're going to start to see very, very serious systems coming out of the Gulf of Mexico at a very repetitive rate, almost on a weekly basis, if not a bi-weekly basis. We're going to start to see some pretty enhanced weather activity for our folks along the Gulf Coast and particularly here in the Sunshine State of Florida. Before we wrap up and I take you down to the surface level, we're going to go all the way up to 250 millibars so we can get a feel for what our jet streams are doing at the uppermost point of the environment. As you take this through time, you can see a clear delineation between where our polar front jet is expected to remain and where our subtropical jet is expected to remain dominant as well, indicating a bona fide El Nino pattern setting up for most of us here in North America and parts of Central America for that matter, Baja California and the northern periphery of Mexico. As you continue through, you can see we are expecting a very, very amplified pattern, bringing in lots of widespread snowfall, high winds, good lake effect conditions as well for the Great Lakes and the northeastern coastline. The eastern Canadian provinces are likely to see that bona fide polar vortex begin to take shape. So all in all, guys, as we get ready to turn the page of the calendar from November into December and welcome the full-fledged winter season to our neighborhood, you can see we are going to see quite an energetic pattern begin to set up, not only because of El Nino, but also because of how aggressive those jet streams are going to begin to interact with one another. Now, I know I'd mentioned the United States, but I wanted to mainly look at what the Southeast is going to be dealing with because, guys, I know we wanted rain. We were asking and praying for rain. Well, we're going to get a lot of it according to what our models are thinking. As you take the GFS through time, you can see as that severe weather event begins to take shape, a widespread band of precipitation action is going to come across the Southeast, exiting off the mid-Atlantic coastline, and before you know it, we have another system beginning to take shape in the Gulf of Mexico shortly thereafter, up in our rain chances, and now as we get into the back end of November, getting ready to transition into December, here comes another one, and then another one, and then right after that, we see another one beginning to take shape as we get towards the very tail end of the GFS forecast run. We're not going to spend too much time on this model just because as we get towards the second half of the GFS, obviously we're prone to seeing a lot of significant adjustments, but the big picture still stands, and the conclusion to take away from this is as El Nino really ramps up out there in the Pacific, we're going to see that translate here to the south and the southeast United States in way of very, very frequent and strong, for that matter, low pressure systems cutting across the southern plains into the Gulf Coast and across the state of Florida, potentially trying to move a little bit further to the north, depending on what our polar front jet is doing above the STJ. So folks, I'll echo it one more time. We were talking about getting some rain in here, alleviating the drought. Well, it definitely looks like we're in for that wet winter we've been discussing after all. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you've been having a great weekend and you continue to do so. Get out, have fun, especially if you're out here in the southeast United States. We finally saw a break in all that severe weather activity we had going on for about 3-4 days now. I'm looking outside right now and the sun is beautifully shining, so I definitely advocate you guys get together, have some fun, and enjoy this pre-Thanksgiving weekend before the full-fledged holiday rolls in and we might just see our next El Nino system come in to bring us another round of thunderstorm activity. We will likely not see you guys tomorrow. It doesn't seem like there's going to be anything tropical to discuss, let alone anything significant to talk about over the lower 48, the Caribbean, or Canada for that matter, as we continue to slowly transition up and out of the tropics to the wintertime threats that we are anticipating and have been forecasting for the last several months. Please don't think I'm going to forget about you guys down in the Caribbean, the Lesser and Greater Antilles, parts of Central America who have been tuning in for my coverage of the tropics and that copious amounts of rainfall we had over the last 2 to 3 weeks now. I'm definitely going to continue to update you guys, and I'm going to be covering a very, very wide AOR as we go over the winter and spring seasons. We are going to try to maintain this momentum of growth and year-round coverage to the overall weather pattern here on the Weather Center, guys. So please stay tuned for more. There's plenty more where that came from. Just because we're exiting hurricane season, I've been asked if this channel was going to close down. We are not. We're going to be open for business as we see what the winter season has in store for us and see how aggravated El Nino tries to get as we round out the tropical season and enter winter full-fledged. We'll see you back here on Monday at 6 p.m. for our next full-fledged Weather Center segment, and we'll also see you at 8 p.m. for our Weather Center Live, one of our final tropics talks before we close out the hurricane season. So until then, guys, have a wonderful weekend. Be safe if you're still being affected by those storms down in the Caribbean as well as in Bermuda now for that matter. But we'll talk to you very soon. Thank you all for joining us today. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.